We manage to harness the power of wind, fire, water, even the earth itself. But when it comes to the mastery of ice, these two are nearly unchallenged. Weiss, the Ice Queen of RWBY, and Glacius, the Arctic alien warrior of killer instinct. I'm one fish mob, and it's my job to see who would win in a fight. The world of Remnant. A seemingly peaceful world where advanced technology and the harnessing of natural energies reign supreme. But every fantasy world there is always has a catch. In this world, bloodthirsty monsters wander the streets, criminal undergrounds are always prevalent, and a whole lot more things going on I can't explain here. This world is pretty cruddy to live in.
However, to combat these threats, there is a group of trained warriors called Hunters and Huntresses. They protect the people from the monsters and criminals that live in Remnant, with the most notable group of Huntresses being the color-coded group called RWBY. But today, we're focusing on the white of RWBY, Weiss. Born as a heiress to the Schnee Dust Company, she was born into a family of wealth and power. However, due to the company's controversial labor force with faunus, or in other words, people with animal parts, resulted in escalating backlash targeted at both the company and her family. This resulted in her childhood upbringing as being anything but a good one. Add to that her stress-ridden, aggravated father, several hardships within the company, the disappearance of family and friends, as well as the execution of company board members at the hands of faunus extremists. Her frustration and hatred boiled up into a legit hatred towards faunus, thus making her officially the first racist character on Fan War. As the heiress of the Schnee Dust Company, Weiss was raised from youth to strive to be the best in all she did, including combat. In combat, Weiss utilizes a material called dust, either in its raw form or in conjunction with something else. She uses it to create various effects that suit the situation, though her favorite appears to be ice dust, which she uses offensively and defensively. With this, she can trap enemies, create trails of ice, and can even create giant fists of frozen water. But she doesn't just solely rely on dust alone. She is easily the fastest and most agile on Team RWBY, dodging at incredible speeds and appears to be able to move faster than what the eye can see. Not only that, she is also creative on the battlefield. She applies these attributes to her style of combat. Speaking of which, her fighting style is the fencing style, which makes sense since her favorite weapon is most certainly the Myrtenaster, a multi-action dust rapier with a revolving chamber that can contain 6 different kinds of dust. The Myrtenaster is always stocked with red, cyan, violet, white, yellow, and blue dust, each representing a different element. With red dust, she can release flames from her sword. White dust produces wind to hold off attacks, and with blue dust, Weiss can create walls of ice crystals, form thin sheets of ice, and can shape ice into a giant sword. Weiss can also draw a blue circle in the air to create an invisible barrier for protection or to knock people away. And when not using Myrtenaster as a dust supplier, she can use her speed to dodge attacks and deliver damage through quick thrusts that leave little room for counters. However, one of her most notable abilities is her semblance. Weiss's semblance is the manifestation of her innate impersonal power as an ability unique to her. One of her most notable abilities gained through her semblance is to create glyphs. These glyphs allow her to create platforms that can be used in a variety of ways, from creating a slippery platform to scale on at high speed, to generating mid-air platforms to manipulate her trajectory in the air, or even perform limited time dilation that can speed up actions or launch large opponents into the air. She can even summon avatars of the foes that she's defeated in the past. That's not the only thing she can do with her semblance though. She combines dust with her semblance in order to direct the movement and manifestation of it, like creating a curved wall of ice. However, Weiss's true trump card is her aura, a manifestation of her own spirit that acts like an invisible force field around her. And as long as that shield remains, she cannot be wounded in any way. But it comes at two costs. She can still feel pain when struck, and if her aura is damaged enough, it will dissipate, and when it does, the very next hit could be fatal. Weiss has shown time and time again she's no pushover. She defeated a Grim-possessed armor on her own, stopped a punch from an Legion Paladin with a summoned arm, and is the top ranking of the sparring class during the events of the Vital Festival. However, her weaknesses can be quite vicious and brutal. She's arrogant and snobbish and can be thrown off balance or break concentration against unexpected and or unpredictable attacks. She is also unconfident in her own abilities, rarely fights without the help of Team RWBY, and is the least skilled amongst her teammates. But her greatest weakness are her physical limitations. Her endurance is lackluster. She was panting heavily after a mere run and is unable to take heavy hits as well as other huntresses. Heck, she's been knocked out more than anyone else on her team. But hey, you'll have to catch this Snow Queen before you can beat her. Killer Instinct has an ensemble cast of very powerful fighters. Demons that wish to take over the earth, giant two-headed cyclops that will crush you into paste, to men made of nothing but fire. But in this whole roster of aliens, robots, mutants, and monsters, you have Glacius. One day, Glacius was wandering the galaxy in search of new life, but curiosity wanted to kill this cat, and fate would have it that Glacius wandered too close to Earth and was sucked in by the planet's gravity. Groggy, but counting himself lucky to be alive, he set off to find the parts he needs to repair his damaged ship. Unfortunately, due to his trusting nature, Ultratech was able to capture him and force him into their Killer Instinct tournaments. Luckily for Glacius, he's a member of an alien species renowned for its potent cryogenic abilities, which gives him a large array of abilities and attacks to keep himself alive. His most notable power is the ability to control and manipulate ice for a plethora of attacks or to freeze people solid. And since his body appears to be made of both ice and water, it's also possible he uses the same cryokinesis to morph his body into different shapes. He can liquidize himself into a puddle to quickly move across the ground. He can morph his hands and arms into all kinds of weapons, from lances to axes, or create spiked balls of ice. He can also bend his own molecular structure at will and encase himself in any and all forms of protective shells like a thick layer of body armor. Or he can just beat the tar out of anybody that moves. He can impale his enemies by turning his hand into a gigantic icicle, or inflict an unimaginable amount of pain by turning his hand into a gigantic ice pick. He can also melt into a puddle to avoid attacks and temporarily become invulnerable to any kind of damage. Or if he just feels like it, he can fire an icy blast into his opponent. He can also perform several super moves. After melting, Glacius can reform and perform a hefty uppercut, and his shoulder tackles makes him temporarily invulnerable to projectiles. He can also form balls of ice to throw at enemies and can summon large icicles out of the ground for maximum impalement. But those pale in comparison to Glacius' true trump cards. The first is his Instinct mode, also known as his crystallized state. During this state, he coats himself in a thick layer of ice armor that absorbs one hit. If this armor does get hit, a new one will form after about 3 seconds. He also gains a universal defense boost to any damage he may take. His liquidized power can move much faster and further in the state and can use a homing puddle punch and cross-up puddle punch for maximum damage. Or he can always use his shadow moves, which deal even more damage than what his regular attacks would do. But when one of his opponents can no longer fight, he can finish them off with several no mercy moves. He can impale his opponent with an ice spike to turn them into ice,
turn into a puddle of corrosive liquid to drown the opponent in, or turn into a giant bubble, engulf them, and brutalize them. Or if he's not feeling creative, he can freeze opponents into a huge shard of ice, then shatter them, or create an ice spear and throw it at his opponent. Glacius is definitely no one to mess with. Glacius is certainly a beast in combat, being able to defeat insanely powerful opponents like Chief Thunder, TJ Combo, Cinder, and Spinal, and defeat monstrous beasts such as Saberwolf and Riptor. However, there is one flaw holding Glacius back. He's easily one of the slowest Killer Instinct combatants in terms of basic speed, making him vulnerable to attacks from speedsters. However, thinking of getting close to Glacius may very well be the last thing you do.
Fight!
Now that was just cold-blooded of Glacius. Puns aside, this was certainly no easy win for either, but in the end the win has to be given to Glacius, and here's why. Weiss may have had the speed advantage, but that's where it ends. Glacius was most certainly far stronger, had far superior endurance, being able to take a crud ton of punishment in short sessions, and is more experienced in combat on his own. Not to mention, while Glacius' close range and projectile attacks may be predictable and easily avoided, a lot of the other attacks Glacius has would easily be unpredictable for Weiss, and thus not countered. And yes, Weiss' vast array of dust may have given her an advantage to some extent. However, Glacius would quickly counter Weiss' ice and water dust with cryokinesis, and potentially manipulate the dust's effects for its own use. So this battle ultimately came down to a question. Could Weiss' aura take down Glacius in his instinct mode, or withstand the shadow moves? Well, it most certainly had the potential to, with better durability compared to that of Glacius' crystallized form. However, here's the thing. While her aura may protect her from damage, it can only protect her from damage to an extent. She can still feel pain from the attack, and the aura will break if damaged enough. Add the fact that a lot of Glacius' attacks would be foreign to her, and thus be unexpected or too unpredictable, and her poor endurance level, it's safe to say Glacius would easily be able to inflict enough pain and damage on Weiss and her aura to dissipate it long enough to get in the finishing blow. Or a couple hundred, as seeing how Killer Instinct works. It looks like Beauty was killed by the beast. The winner is Glacius.